to another episode of the CrossFit Harrow podcast. This is episode number 80, and today we have Lynne. Lynne, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
First question that always goes out is, why CrossFit Harrow?
Why CrossFit Harrow? Well, it probably needs to start with why CrossFit at all. So I actually tried CrossFit a few years ago. I went up to the Watford club for the weekend, did the whole weekend thing. Really didn't get on with it. Thought, it's not something I'm going to be able to do. And then weirdly enough, a few years later, my mate Lindsay, who's done one of these podcasts as well.
First one. She'd done the first one, yeah.
Yeah. So it was a great podcast. So I think I was driving past somewhere, and it was either on a roundabout. There was an advert somewhere for CrossFit Harrow, and I said to Lindsay, "Have you ever thought about CrossFit?" Because she was looking for something, because she's done Muay Thai, she's done lots of different stuff. Anyway, so she said, "I'm going to go." Anyway, she fell in love with it. And at the time, I was still going to the gym, just my regular David Lloyd, and I'm pretty good at pushing myself. But Lindsay was absolutely raving about this place. So I'm like, you know what, I'll give it a try. Anyway, that was it. And pretty much from the first time, I was hooked. You got the bug. You got the CrossFit bug. I got the CrossFit Harrow bug, because I tried CrossFit before. But and it was something, I keep talking about Lindsay, but she'd said that, from the first moment she walked in and saw subs smiling and stuff, and that's it, right? The whole atmosphere here is genuinely, people want you to do really well, but it's very welcoming, and it's just a great place to be. I mean, I'm here 3 times today. Right?
It was good to know. It's good to know that you did that. Let's talk about your sport through school.
Yeah.
Was it a big part of your upbringing?
Definitely. So there was a few things. So first of all, I started off doing music. So when I was pretty young, at infant school, I had they recognised I got a musical aptitude. So my mum said, "Do you want to play piano?" So I did, and did piano all the way through. I've played guitar.
There's like different gradings for that as well?
Yeah, I did grade 8 piano, and then I learnt the drums and did grade 8 drums, and a bit of an overachiever. But anyway, so music was the thing. And then I went to high school, and I didn't have an amazing time at high school. I got bullied a lot. Wasn't the only one. It was just a particularly tough school. And what helped me through it was all the stuff I did outside of school. Now, I was also pretty academic, so I could almost just relax in lessons and get my work done. But what helped me was all the sport that I did and all the music that I did. So I sang in choirs, was in orchestras, bands.
And this was still through high school?
Yeah. But the sport was, I was the house captain, I was athletics, I did shot put and discus, I had the school record for the shot put.
Yeah. Still to this day?
No, I think somebody's bashed it. I forgot what it was as well. It was quite long for a 12-year-old. And then I did hockey and netball, and running when I was forced to. So I remember doing cross country, hating it, and then my PE teacher said, "Look, if you don't make an effort at cross country, I'm going to kick your arse," basically. So the next time I went round, and I think I was the fastest. So I can do it when forced, long distance, but and then when I went to university, I kind of carried on the music and the sport. So I joined a local netball team and things like that. And then the gym, basically. The gym became my friend after that, because it's something you can do anywhere, right? Yeah. And then I have to mention cycling as well. So when I went to uni, I was in Manchester, which is basically a flat city. So I got myself a bike and cycled everywhere.
Right.
All the time, right? Even when I was drunk, which was a bit mad. But I just cycled everywhere. So again, bikes have always featured in my kind of activity as well. Yeah.
What did you do at uni?
Well, I went to do music, interestingly, and within about 2 months knew I'd made a mistake. I'd never really made a mistake at anything to that point. So, as I said, I'd not had the best time at high school, but I was academic, so I could, smash my GCSEs and A-levels, no problem. I had never come across a problem before. So went and thought, well, music is going to be it. It wasn't. It really, really wasn't.
How did you take that at the time?
It kind of broke me a little bit.
Yeah.
So, we'll probably come on to talk about my mental health, but that's the first point I think I got depression, because I might have had it before, but I just didn't know how to deal with.
There was so much success.
Yeah. And I sound really arrogant, but I'm not. It just, when nothing goes to plan, or your plan fails, I didn't know how to cope with that. Anyway, so I switched to the English course for a couple of months. Again, wasn't me. And then I'd made a really good friend. She now lives in Canada, actually, and she was doing this management course with American Business Studies. And I thought, well, that sounds quite cool. So I went along to some of her lectures and thought, I like the variety of this. I like the fact we're doing economics and accountancy and psychology. And then I thought, well, hang on, I'm quite decent at French, so why don't I do the French bit as well? So I decided to take the rest of the year off and then join the next year and do international management and French.
So almost that first year, you actually ended up taking a year off?
Yeah, I took the rest of the year off. I finished at Christmas, went home, licked my wounds a bit. Actually went to work for my dad, who was a lift and crane engineer. So I worked in, and I learned how to weld things together and cut chain and stuff and drive lots of vans.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really cool getting to know my dad like that and how other people saw him. I was really close to my dad. But yeah, the driving I can get in anything now and drive it.
And you just feel completely...
Because I mean, once I had to go up to Glasgow with him and drive back a brand new pickup truck, and we had to do, I think at the time you had to run cars in. I had to do 60 miles an hour all the way back from Glasgow in a pickup truck. But anyway, pretty bonkers.
It was definitely like, it was almost like learning a new skill.
Oh yeah. So it's really cool now. So I'll go anywhere in the world and drive, right? So I've no problem going over to the States. I'm like, I'll drive. I'll hire the car.
That experience, you've dealt with it in the past.
Well, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's probably a bit about control as well, but
Possibly. So you with finding uni and not it working out for you, what kind of things did you face that? How did you react, and what did you go through that bit when you kind of felt like it wasn't the course for you?
Well, it was sheer panic to start with. It was like, shit, this hasn't worked out right. This isn't gone to plan.
And there wasn't a plan B straight away?
No, because everything was like, right, it's going to work out. I'm going to do music, and then I'm probably going to be a music teacher, and maybe be a lecturer.
Is that what the goal was?
Yeah, and then maybe do some, because at the time because I play percussion, so that's the drums and everything else, so timpani, all the things you see at the back of an orchestra being hit, right? So I was actually gigging as well.
I did do very well at the triangle, let alone everything else.
The triangle's more difficult than it looks. So I was gigging, so I was getting paid for gigs, so I was going to be a jobbing musician, lecturer, teacher, whatever, right? And that was my love of music, just like disappeared overnight. So
is it still there? Has it come back at any time?
Weirdly enough, when I moved to London, so that's over 20 years ago, it's a really good social thing, right? Particularly if you're on your own and stuff. And I'm quite used to going off and living somewhere on my own and doing things, but I like to meet people, so like this place, right? But so music was a great way to do that. So I joined various bands and orchestras and stuff. So it was always something I had. And I've not played probably since Max was about 2, and he's now 11, but I could probably go back to an orchestra now, an amateur one, and kind of get back into it, because you never forget some of these things. Same with the piano. So I've just got rid of my piano actually because I wasn't using it, but I did reteach myself guitar in lockdown. So I've got that at home.
I've said to someone before, it's so hard. I think it's the coordination required for guitar is.
Well, I think piano and percussion are harder, personally speaking. So because you have to do both hands, so it's almost like guitar's 2 hands, right? So once you've done it, 2 hands. So I found that quite easy. And I learned classical guitar when I was younger, but whereas when I'm, in the start of lockdown, I could pick. I went for acoustic guitar.
What's classical guitar?
The Spanish styling guitar and all that kind of...
Yeah, like Master Zorro kind of stuff.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Whereas acoustic guitar, I was strumming along to all sorts, the Beatles through to, whatever. So I will pick that up again. But at the minute, I just kind of really want to... I'm into CrossFit, so that's my priority. Outside of work and family and stuff.
So done the degree.
Yeah.
And then what was it? Once you kind of figured out like your new course, what was it that you wanted to? What did you want to go and do?
I didn't have a clue. I did not have a clue. So I went and did. So this degree meant that I could go and spend a year in a French-speaking country. So the option was France or Montreal, and I couldn't believe no one wanted to go to Montreal in Quebec, in Canada, right? So I went there again on my own because I just thought people were nuts wanting to just go to France. It was fantastic, but again, shit scary. And sometimes I do these things without really thinking about it. And got there, and I was so homesick. It was really hard.
You must have been, 21 at the time?
Yeah. Really, really homesick, to the point that my parents, bless them, had to pay for me to get a flight home for Christmas and back again. But then I settled in, and, it took me a while. But looking back, and the experience was amazing. So I was fluent in French when I got back. I made some really good friends who I'm still in touch with.
Do you still speak, do you still converse in French?
I probably could. So we trained before lockdown, before COVID, we'd pop across to France for like 4 days once a year so I could just practice. Same with Spanish, actually. I speak a bit of Spanish. So, I just need to be immersed in it, and then I can,
Yeah, once you're in that environment, you start picking things back
definitely.
up.
I don't really know any Italian, apart from strega, which means witch, doesn't it? So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And basta, which is enough.
Yes, basta is enough. Or stop.
That's it.
Stop.
So, that's about it in Italian.
Yeah, basta.
Yeah.
So coming out of uni, went over to Quebec. What did it look like for you? What did you feel like you wanted to, you got that experience now under your belt? Paint us a picture.
Again, absolutely clueless. So I knew, and this is, so actually my final year was back in Manchester, and I was really lucky. I kind of roomed, or we were in this hall of residence with, it was just women actually. We got on brilliantly well. It was very lucky. And I was roomed next to this girl called Rebecca, who was really on it career-wise. She'd got some really switched on parents who were academic, but also kind of really good, really career focused, where my mum, I mean, no disrespect, but she was a teacher. My dad was an engineer. I was the first person to go to university in my family. So I was a bit clueless, but my mate was like, look, there's this thing called the milk round, which is where all these prospective employers come and they talk to students to get on the graduate scheme. So I'm like, go milk round then. So I picked 4 milk round opportunities. One was with Ernst & Young, which is actually a competitor of who I work for now. Another company, this research company, and then I think it was United Biscuits or something. Anyway, so Ernst & Young weren't interested. The other company weren't. Oh, that was it. It was the, who was it? It was the United Nations or something like that. Really random choices because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I got offered the research company in London, and I got offered this United Biscuits in Manchester, and I picked London because I wanted to live in London. That was it. That's about as much forethought I'd have about my career.
A lot of people make that decision just based on like what's around and the opportunities and stuff.
But then it's weird because I was asked to do this the other day actually on one of a work podcast, was look back at your career, and because particularly women in data, which is what I work in, we have what are called kind of squiggly line careers. We don't go and get data science degrees and computing degrees and then go into
As
data.
In women.
Women don't do that. We just end up in data. But then if I look back at everything I've done, the thing that I liked the best at university in my course was consumer behaviour and psychology and market data, right? And then the first job I got was in data. And you look back and it looks like I've been involved in data all the way through, and it's not happened like that. It's happened by accident almost, but or it's felt like accident, or I've had somebody steering me somewhere.
Yeah, and along this this new path with work and stuff, where has fitness been a priority in that? Has that been at the top? Has that been somewhere in the middle? It's
dipped over time. So when I first moved to London, it wasn't a priority at all. Meeting people, trying to get by on. I earned 14 grand a year, and I appreciate that that's what some people are still on now. But when your rent leaves you about 50 quid a month to go out, eat, and buy clothes and stuff, there wasn't any time for that. So fitness really didn't play a part in it. There was nothing. And for me, fitness by that point had associated with being a member of a gym, not thinking about, getting on a bike again or running
like
and stuff like that. Nothing like that. So, and I think at the time it was like that, right?
But I think that's a lot of people still now, like they associate with fitness just being inside 4 walls of a gym. And it doesn't have to be. It can be outdoors in team sports and individual sport. Just like adventuring, anything. Yeah.
And by that point, I'd got the stupid habit of smoking, which I started in Montreal at the age of 21. I mean, most people have done that and finished that by then. But no, I decided that smoking was a thing. So there was a lot of a very unhealthy 20s, smoking, drinking, and not really any exercise.
And when did you give up the smoking?
When I turned 30. So by that point, I'd moved to PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I'd met my future husband. And at the time, we could still smoke in bars, and I think it was just coming in where you couldn't. And I remember, and it was just you just used to go home and stink of cigarettes. It was disgusting. But we got together like 2 weeks before my 30th birthday, and I said, you know what? He was really anti-smoking. He tolerated it, but he didn't like it very much. So I said, right, I'll quit when I'm 30. Because I kind of figured...
Smoked all you could for 2 weeks.
Well, yeah, also what you've done before you're 30, largely, you can almost get your body can recover. So I did. I just quit. And that
completely done.
I had the odd wobble, but pretty much done. And I was one of those lucky ones that once it had stuck, that was it. I smell cigarettes now and think it's disgusting. But then, but I still wasn't really I hadn't found my thing. And then I was still doing my music. And then 34, we decided that we'd have Max. So another good excuse not to exercise. I'm pregnant now. Right? But then after Max was born, that's when I was feeling really tired and lethargic all the time. Now, an element of that is my mental health. Depression always makes you feel quite tired.
I was going to go and touch into that and where that came in and stuff. Yeah,
but I was actually working with a personal trainer at the time at the David Lloyd gym, and he'd got me on this crazy diet, right? Which you basically don't eat anything. But nothing was shifting. No, and he said, "Have you ever had your thyroid checked?" And I said, no. Anyway, I had it checked. It basically wasn't working. So now I'm on some very high dose medication. But so I dropped loads of weight because the thyroid stuff kicked in and that was it. I got down to about 10.5 stone, which on me looks like I need to eat. So I'm a bit more than that now. But so I got into that. And then because it was a very extreme diet, it kind of, extreme exercise, I stopped again. And, it kind of never really found anything consistent. And then it was actually Joe Wicks, the body coach, that got me into consistently exercising, I'd say about 5 years ago. And I've not really stopped exercising since. 5 times a week. And he taught me the whatever it is, right? Going for a walk, getting on my bike, doing some HIIT training, or doing, whatever. So that got me into...
In your head, it was kind of like activity.
Something switched.
Yeah, as activity as opposed to
Yeah.
Having a definitive goal by the end of that day that you had to do X amount of calories, you had to do a certain workout. It was just, as long as I move, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It's quite a good way to, I think, and actually we were talking about this earlier today as a team, that a lot of us lose that balance.
Yeah.
And we just go way too much into, whether that be fitness or something else. And it's just find that balance to, as long as you're moving, that's better than standing still.
Definitely.
But it's
Absolutely.
just trying to get people to understand that.
It's hard. It's really tough. And now I know I'm much more self-aware about how I'm feeling. I think the older you get, it gets easier.
You tend to connect a little bit more with those kind of things.
Yeah. So I know that. So I choose to train probably 5 or 6 times a week here because it just makes me feel good. Now I know I probably should take more breaks than that, but the feeling I get, it's like the days I don't, I have to get on the spin bike. Not because I feel guilty. Nothing like that. It's not associated with that anymore. It's the sheer pleasure of doing something and getting out of breath and challenging myself. Even on the spin bike at home, I push myself.
Yeah, I would say it's the equivalent of someone saying get your steps in. It's just your activity level is increasing regardless of whether you're doing a CrossFit workout, a boot camp, a spin or whatever. It's just moving for that day.
Yeah.
So with regard, going back to the kind of mental health thing, we're talking about exercise and how it's helped. When did you discover that was something that affected you?
Yes, as I said, I had a bit of a wobble when I was 18 when, it didn't really work out at university. But then at the time, nobody really, God, how long? It's a long time ago. It's like 94, something like that. So people weren't talking about it. My parents were really, depressed means you're suicidal, right? So, they took the lock off my bedroom door, and if I shut the door, they'd barge in, and so they thought I was going to commit suicide, right? So that was when I was 18. It was quite traumatic, and it was very you don't take medication for this. You've got to sort yourself out,
Yeah, that was quite a... Not so much now. I think it's a big, massive thing that spoke about and people raising awareness. But definitely early 90s, late 80s was very much, or even before, was very much like, you just got to get on with it.
Absolutely.
You can't talk about it. You just get up and go.
Yeah. So probably unbeknownst to me, and again, looking back, it's easy to look back. I've had it all my life, and it's affected a lot of the things I've done and the decisions I've made, some of which I'm not very proud of, right? But anyway, it was after I'd had Max, and I was at work, and I just, so it's probably about 6 years ago, and we discovered the thyroid thing, which, that was it. But I just felt there was, when the light goes from behind your eyes, I just knew there was something really wrong.
How long after? Because there is obviously postnatal depression too.
It was Max was about 3 or 4, so it was.
But it still can.
Yeah, it could have been.
If it's not discovered, it would still be there.
It absolutely could have been that, because it was weird, because I had Max, then we discovered the thyroid thing, and then I had this, and so I had to take some time out of work, which for me, part of my who I am, or who I was, I should say, was really wrapped up in, I was so proud I worked at PwC. I mean, this big four accountancy firm, amazing, right? That was part of who I was, right? So the fact that it wasn't working as well, and I wasn't feeling great, was just this huge, again, the failure point, right? I'd not, and actually it wasn't failing. I was doing really well. It's just what was in my head.
The expectation you had on yourself to produce.
Yeah. So I remember speaking to my boss going, she's like, how are you? I'm like, I'm not great at all. She said, right, go home, call the doctor. And I took about 4 weeks off at that point. And I remember going to see a psychologist because I knew something was wrong. And it wasn't, she wasn't a really good fit for me as a psychologist. I went to the doctors and we started the medication. Fortunately, I didn't have any, because I was on so much for my thyroid. I'm like, right, what's another set of tablets? And regardless of what my mum and dad were saying at the time, I'm like, I don't care. I want to be well because I've got Max. I want to be a good mum to Max. And that is a driving force of everything I do, right? So, but the psychologist wasn't wrong. And then it wasn't right. But anyway, I went back to work. And then about 6 months later, that was when I needed to take about 3 months off, right? It didn't get any better. So again, switched the medication, and then I found a psychologist. I don't know how, it was a random thing. I'd search for someone. I'm like, she sounds cool. And she was. And it was a cognitive behavioural psychologist, and somebody that helped me see things in different light. So that really worked for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but for me, when you're depressed, you assume the world's against you, you're shit at everything,
not good enough.
You're not good enough, and everyone sees you that way. And that can be in a work context, a personal life context, sport context. And then she said, okay, well, let's try the evidence-based approach. What evidence do you have that you're not good enough at this? Does your son love you? Yes. Does your husband love you? Yes. What do you normally get rated at work? Okay. So, but you have to almost teach yourself. So she was fantastic. I spent about 6 months having sessions with her. And we created mantras that I kind of still use today, right? And this was quite a few years ago now. And so I learned a lot about myself. And I learned that actually who you are isn't what you do, right? And I remember a NatWest advert coming out at the time saying, we are what we do. And I'm like, that's not true. I was really annoyed by this stupid advert. But anyway.
Change your bank straight away.
Yeah, because it's not. So now, interesting enough, I was reflecting on it. When you asked me to write down who I was, what my job title is, I wrote mum, friend, wife first, because you've asked me that 6 years ago and I said, PwC director, mum, friend, and now it's more important to me that I'm Lynne Bailey, all these things that I am and
wife,
do.
Daughter, friend, sister,
And then I just so happen to have a pretty cool job, but that's not who I am. That's what I do.
That's amazing to have that different view and thought.
So it takes someone 45.
But when did you? This process started a few years ago, and that's where you highlighted and discovered that there was things that we needed to adapt to and change the process. Did you find it hard adjusting?
I did, but I knew I had to do it. As I said, the driving force for me. It's weird enough. I didn't want kids. I was anti-kids, and even when my husband, it was my birthday when I was 34. We'd just gone out for dinner, and he's like, "Should we try and have a family?" And I'm like, "Right, okay, fine, whatever." I was not that fussed about it.
Was that because of how the commitment to work at the time that maybe you thought that would disrupt that?
Possibly, and also I was a perfectionist, and I didn't feel like I was where I needed to be financially, probably career, body-wise, everything. And for me, everything had to be perfect before you even thought about getting pregnant. But then I'm like, well, then we
just got to start.
It just when we did, right? So I thought, well, it'll take ages anyway.
Next thing you know,
if it wasn't literally the first time. So I'm like, oh well. But the minute it's like this weird thing came over me, the minute I felt something in my tummy, that was it.
That was almost like a new revelation.
Yeah, I am going to be the best mum to whoever this is in my stomach.
Well, they often say that though, don't they? They say that when you have a child, your purpose then in life is for that
Yeah.
child, as opposed to
Yeah.
you don't put yourself first anymore. It's you put them.
Absolutely. My parents were gobsmacked. They're like, "You're pregnant." Like you. In fact, when
Because you were so strongly against it.
yeah, absolutely. So we had our 3-month scan. This is the thing. This is how cool we were with it all. So we had our 3-month scan. I think it was the February or something, and we hadn't told anybody at that point because we're all a bit. Everyone around us. I mean, we've known people with fertility struggles and stuff, and I know it's not easy, right? So we wanted to be sure that everything was okay. And even to the point because I was 34, we had to have what's called a nuchal scan to see if Max potentially had Down syndrome. And they're like, before you come for the nuchal scan, discuss have a discussion about what you're going to do. We sat there on the floor going, should we keep him whatever? Yeah, fuck it, whatever. So that was our discussion. So, but we'd had the scan, everything was great, and we phoned everyone. No one was in. So we sat on this news and no one was there. And then when we told them, they're like, really?
Really?
Yeah. And we're like, oh, well, we're actually quite excited by the whole thing. Oh, did you plan it? I'm like, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And no one could anyway. But then the minute, even my sister's like, you're not very kid friendly. And I'm like, but yeah, I mean, you've seen me with Max and other kids actually. It's just, You
embrace it though, don't you?
Yeah.
That becomes your new one of your new purposes. Like, we've often spoken about like people's purpose in life.
Yeah.
And as I said, I think when people have children, I don't know, but from discussions and conversations I've had with people, that your purpose then becomes for your child.
It definitely switched something on in me. So that was then my driving force for, okay, well, I'm not good. I don't care. So I'm quite happy and open to talk about depression and what it means to me, if it will help someone else get some help, because at the end of the day, it's so important to me to be a good mum and a good friend and a good wife and a good...
Do you think that it came as in you went at the right time? Do you think you could have gone any earlier for that help, or do you think you nailed it?
Yeah, years ago. Yeah, because I said some of the choices, some of the things you go to do, and I don't know, well, things I did to try and fit in and, be liked and stuff. So, And
that probably stemmed from where you said at school.
Yeah.
For the bullying process.
Yeah, absolutely. So
it's mad how it affects so much, like later on. There's different times where we were talking again about with the staff yesterday, like growing up, there's certain ages, I can't remember exactly, but where traumas stick with you a lot more than they do.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It is, and it's really bad. In fact, weirdly enough, my son Max has just started high school. His biggest fear about high school was bullies, and we've never. My husband was bullied as well. He's black, and he was picked on because he was the only black kid in the school, right? So he was picked on loads, and we've never said to Max, "Oh yeah, you're going to get bullied at high school." We've not really talked about it. We've talked about the really positive things about high school. I got to do all sorts. I got to play in all these things and win awards for music, and got to go to France, all this amazing stuff, right? But so we've talked about all the really good stuff, not the challenging stuff, but he was focused on this bully thing. He watches a lot of American TV where there's always a bully, right?
Yeah, that's kind of the storyline, isn't it?
Yeah, so he has asked us, and we're like, well, actually, yes, we both were bullied, but...
it's also important for him to know that that unfortunately, it is a sad world that we live in, and that stuff does happen. But it will make him a better individual, knowing that it does exist and not oblivious to it.
Yeah, exactly, and he recognises it. So interesting enough, he's got a few WhatsApp groups, and I do keep an eye on it because he's a bit young to be on WhatsApp, but all his friends are. So
it's just moving with the times, though, isn't it?
I know.
It's probably going to get younger. A 4-year-old will have it soon.
I know, but there's a girl in his class, and she's not particularly nice, but she's just come out that she likes this boy and he likes her and stuff, and somebody had got hold of a screen grab of a message between her and this boy, and they're sharing it around. So I said to Max, that's not really the right thing to do. I said, that's a bit like bullying. He's like, okay, Mum, all right, I'll make sure that stops then.
Yeah, well, I think that's amazing, because I think, again, sometimes it goes down to ignorance of not seeing, like they don't see those things, or maybe their parents weren't bullied themselves and ignorant to it, and they think that it doesn't exist, but actually having recognised it's probably more important for them than not seeing it. So you did right here with that, living in a world of like equality and being happy to say that, being a feminist. Talk to me a little bit more about that. Is that through maybe that you said, you know, growing up you had all those experiences that with your dad and stuff. Is that stem from there?
Weirdly enough, it was my mum. So she. And it was quite different being a female in the, well, it's probably not different enough, right? Being a female growing up in the 80s and 90s as it is now. It's just I could see, I was almost born where I could see the inequality. So at the time you watch the adverts, and you know, fairy advert, it's the woman washing up and it's the woman doing the cleaning and it's the woman doing, and it just bothered me. Like this from as far as I can remember.
I hadn't, now that you say that, I recognise that. I hadn't even thought of that before.
Yeah, and the nice thing was in our house, it was pretty equal, right? So, you know, my mum wouldn't call herself a feminist. In fact, she hates feminists, right? And there are a lot of people say, you know, I'm like, yeah, but a feminist is somebody who wants equality. That's it, right? It's not somebody who burns a bra and thinks men are evil. I love men, right? Really love men. But in our house, you know, it was either my mum or my dad cooking the Sunday roast. My dad did loads of stuff with us. You know, he wasn't one of these absent fathers or ones that worked really hard and didn't put their children first. We were top of his list, right? Me and my sister. He did the ironing. He did. You know, it was. We all grew up in that house. So for me to then see something on TV that doesn't reflect, you know, I just didn't think it was fair. So I remember doing work experience when I was 14. We went to do a week somewhere, and I worked at the local council office. And I walked in trousers on the first day, and they said, you can't come to work in trousers. I'm like, why? They said, because women don't wear trousers in this office. I said, well, how is that going to affect what I do? So I refused. They were almost to the point that they were going to say I couldn't do my work experience. I'm like, no, I'm wearing trousers.
But that's also ignorance from people. Like, one thing that often I've been the guys hear me say it, and like just sometimes why things are the way they are, and I don't know where it stemmed from that a woman has to do this and a guy has to do that. Yeah,
it's weird, isn't it? And I was reflecting on it again this morning, thinking because I was saying to myself, I'm okay with. I think I'm pretty liberal-minded, right? But then I'm thinking, well, why should anybody have to justify who they are, what they believe, what they look like? So, you know, it almost doesn't matter that I'm liberal-minded or not. You know, you are who you are, and you know. Somewhere
down the line, someone set a standard that men are supposed to go to work and earn money, and women are supposed to stay home. And I guess that comes from. I can only imagine that women were the chosen ones for childbirth.
I think it's that you have ultimately it's such a power, isn't it, to be able to create life. Yeah. But then if you think about it, we can't do it without each other.
Exactly.
So listen, I'm not saying that it has to be, the dynamic has to be a husband and wife and married, and that's not what I'm saying, but we need some chemical element from a male and some chemical element from a female to create life. That's not to say that we have to sustain life in that way, and you have to be that.
Because obviously at the moment there is, like in the day-to-day world, there is a massive thing of inequality and women and men and race as well. Yeah. And it's how do we fix it?
It's interesting because I'm the. I was saying to Grant actually. I think it was this morning that I'm the Black Lives Action Plan champion. Bit of a mouthful at work. I chose to do that because my husband's black, so my son's mixed heritage, and when the George Floyd murder happened and the Black Lives Matter movement kind of became, pretty big, we were facing some personal challenges, from friends of ours going, well, why do Black Lives matter more so than white lives? And we're like, well, that's not what we're saying. So the same thing came up at work, and I'm like, well, hang on a minute. There's almost an element of redressing the balance and understanding, yes, all lives matter, but at the minute, we've got a real problem with how we view black people, and it's still happening. So
I've got to say, that my niece is. Her dad is black and my sister obviously white, and since she's been in this world, I've had not to say that I didn't have a negative view or anything like that, but I've opened my eyes and tried to listen and hear more because try to understand, because she's going to go through some things I never faced, purely because of the colour of her skin, unfortunately.
And it just kind of, when it all started, the Black Lives Matter movement became even bigger. I'd say to my husband, so do you cross the road if there's a bunch of white women? He went, yeah. Yeah, I do, because I don't want to intimidate them because I'm black. I'm like, so we'd never even had that conversation. So in one way, I mean, he's quite happy that the conversations are there, but now more needs to be done, right? Because it's still, you know, we don't feel very good about going to the US right now because, I mean,
it's chaos.
Yeah, well, at least Donald Trump's not in power anymore, and he wasn't helping with the whole situation. But we think twice about it. We think twice about going to South Africa. This is going to sound really bad, but because of some of the things that we hear about, you know, the experiences of black people over there, and it does limit. I mean, imagine that's nuts. It limits where you go.
I do. This is a strong statement, but I do think there is an element, well, a lot of element of white privilege that exists.
Oh God, yeah.
And it still exists to this day.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. We are in 2021, and it's a very it's a long way away from where the world was created, and like there's so many different colours, cultures, ethnicities, and the worrying thing is that, and I guess in some way I'm linking this to the kind of world situation about Brexit, is that there is a white privilege where we want, people say that they want British or white people doing X and doing this, but actually it's impossible to have that. In order to go to the doctors, it's going to be not always a white person. No. In order to go to a petrol station, it's not always going to be a white person. It's just, we can't rely in this world with just white people.
Why would you want? I don't understand. But this
is a weird thing. We go to Spain for Spanish holiday. We go for holidays. We go to Turkish or Italians for dinner. Yeah. We go
Going back to an advert, actually, HSBC did a brilliant one. I mean, they do a series of and it was, I forgot the comedian's name that does it, but the guy with the curly hair and the glasses. And he talked about, it's about Britain not being an island. So it was exactly that same point. So we drink coffee from Italy, we eat food from India, and we're this island, right? We're not really. You know, we are such a cultural mix anyway. And if you think about, I mean,
what is Britain? What is...
Well, exactly. Where have we come from? And it's the same all over the world.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I don't think we can ever put our finger on it. And will it change? Can we make it change?
Well, interesting. So we're very lucky. So where I work, we've got there's a guy called Dr. John Amici, an ex-basketball player, now runs a organisational psychology company, so he's black, about 6'7", gay, and a kind of very opinionated speaker on stuff. So he's going to make, you know, so he's obviously had some challenges, but we're really lucky he's now helping us as KPMG as an organisation. And he says even in his company that he runs, he knows he probably has some racists that work there. He says, I'm not trying to change the way people think. I'm telling them that you can't voice, it's just not okay to say what the hell you like. It's not okay to do what you like, right? If you're working for me, and in fact in life, you might have this internal reaction to somebody that's black and you think, oh, stereotype, they're going to mug me or they're going to do this. It's like, think that, you do not act on that. You don't, so he's like, you can't change the way people think. And if you can, it's only through doing, right? So, you know, if you do the same thing all the time with the same people, you're never going to change, right? It comes back to exercise. You've got to change something, and you can't. I don't think you should start with how you think. I think sometimes you have to change with what you do, and then.
I won't use exact names, but my sister's boyfriend has a very white British name. So when he goes to jobs, people are very surprised to see a black man. Yeah. Which sometimes means that unfortunately doesn't get the full works or like just treated a little bit different. Yeah. But I think it goes, a lot of it stems through education as well. Yeah. I think I was taught in school about Henry VIII and Hitler and things like that. Yeah. But I think it's very important. Those things are very important, but they probably should stem from education in school. Like, it should be taught now through school.
Well, they've said that they're going to, I've forgotten where it is, they're going to have Black History in the curriculum. I've forgotten which school it is. And actually it's Black History Month this month, and I posted something on Instagram.
Actually, I did see that,
Yeah, so it's a great opportunity to kind of educate ourselves, and I think having it as part of the curriculum is important. I mean, even if it's just on a really personal level for Max. So when he was at junior school, they'd have all these, come dress as your favourite historical figure. And he's like, but Mum, all the historical figures we've learnt about are white. I want to go as a brown historical figure because I'm brown. I mean, I was so amazed by him saying that. So we found, Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, and he went dressed because he wanted to celebrate the fact he was brown. And it's so amazing to hear. So, I think it is, and if kids like him notice, right, and are willing to stand up and do something about it. Yeah,
it will become definitely like that younger generation having a bit of a bigger voice and stuff. And I do think it's important because, as I said, like even as a male, if we have a comparison to we're saying with equality and stuff, I wouldn't have looked at that until you just said it. That Fairy Liquid advert as a woman washing, like it wouldn't have come into my mind. So the fact that if we can put it into schools to educate so that there is a more educated reasoning behind what people do, what people say, and things like that.
And don't make assumptions. So even I catch Max sometimes talking about, a woman wouldn't do that or doesn't do that. I'm like, well, hang on a minute.
We can't, as a male, we don't know because we'll never experience that. As a white person, we would never know what someone of colour experiences.
Totally, I'm never going to know what it feels like. You're absolutely right.
And I think a lot are ignorant to that.
Yeah.
And just dismiss it completely.
Well, the most frightening conversation I had around this whole thing was a colleague where I was working who said, "Well, we don't need to do anything about Black Lives Matter. There's no problem." I was absolutely horrified.
Yeah.
And actually, I said to this individual, I said, "Well, just because you don't see it doesn't mean to say it's not there." I said, "The second thing is, please don't say that to any of our colleagues. Please don't say that to, we're meant to be leaders here and setting an example. By all means, think it. Do some research. Yeah. Educate yourself, but do not say it."
Sometimes also having that conversation, I think maybe there might be, me and Grant often have very similar conversations and we talk and sometimes it is worth, having that, they're hard conversations to have, but actually if more people were able to converse about it rather than, let's say, point fingers and argue, it would also not solve the problem, but lead towards that.
Exactly. It's awkward as arse talking about. I'm like, I remember being sat chairing actually at work this group with a lot of our Black Heritage colleagues, and I'm like, I said, I'm very aware I'm a middle-aged white woman trying to talk to you about the issues coming out of the George Floyd murder, and I'm probably going to be horrendous at this, but I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah.
And they were brilliant. They were really, really, But if I'd have done that the second time and been as clumsy about it, then bad. I'm bad, right? Yeah. I need to make sure I'm comfortable. But the first time it's like when somebody's passed away and we're as Brits.
What do you say?
We don't. So I'll phone someone and go, I have no idea what to say, but I'm really sorry. And the effort, the thought of you doing that is better than just the thought of, it's really awkward, so I'm going to ignore it and just not say anything to somebody.
Yeah.
You have to give it a go.
Yeah, at least try. Like, effort goes a long way.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I think people do appreciate that. So with fitness, it's the last few years have kind of been really, you've been really involved in fitness.
Yeah.
It's helped you through the hard times.
And continues to, right?
Yeah, it continues to.
Yeah.
What would you, because you wrote it, how it's been a revelation to you and career-wise, to talk about that a little bit more and how it's helped you with your day-to-day and job-wise and career. So
I think fitness definitely, so what it does for me is it's particularly CrossFit, right? I can't imagine myself ever not being hooked on it. It's my thing now, right? It's part of who I am. So, and it's really cool to think. I mean, I had a particularly stressful day at work yesterday, and it's okay to come here and do something that I enjoy that challenges me in a completely different way. So I'm mentally challenged. I'm not saying I'm not mentally challenged here, by the way, because some of the coordination you need to have, which I haven't got yet.
Yeah.
But you're meant to have something else to go, right, okay. And actually I do some of my best thinking when I'm involved in this kind of sport or exercise, right? Because I'll something will click that I've been, thinking about at work whilst I'm here, so I can then go back and go, right, because I was working on it. It's almost like you free this part of the brain up. I was working on this problem of how to get on a bloody box, right? That it frees that bit up to think about this problem that you're dealing with at work. So for me, it's absolutely crucial. I talk about it at work all the time. Everybody knows I come here and how frequently I come here, and how much of a benefit it's been to me.
We've got to get a contract in with KPMG.
Absolutely. But what I did, particularly during lockdown, because I was exercising mostly on my bike because we couldn't really do much, I was actively encouraging my teams to go and get out of the house, do something, and continue to do so, right? So I'm like, look, you don't have to be a sporty person, but move, right?
So again, I think that's where people just are so fixated, and maybe it's what the industry teaches them. It's like you can just move and have fun. It doesn't necessarily have to be so regimental with 3 sets of 10. You've got to do this for time. Just get out. Just run, walk, cycle.
Exactly.
Walk backwards. Set yourself a challenge of walking up a mountain. Whatever it is, just go and do it.
Totally. Yeah. So I think one of the nice things about, I guess, getting older or being more comfortable with myself, I think, is just that bring your whole self to work thing. So people know that I've got a job title, but they know all about me, right? And who I am, what I like to do, and as I said, encouraging people to find their thing, because work will come and go. Work, you're going to stop at some point, right? It's really important to me that I have something also to talk about myself, about, right? So I don't introduce myself as a chief data officer at KPMG. I say, I'm Lynne, I'm this kind of person, I do that, and whatever. But
this is where I think society's broken. We're all taught that work is everything.
Oh, absolutely.
And the STEM's part of the problems that we were talking about before.
Yeah.
We're taught from school.
And men in particular, this is where, I'm not saying men have it easy at all. That's not what I'm saying. But men in particular, it's about job title, size of earning, the car, the everything. You have different challenges to women, right? Massively different challenges. Whereas, and I remember reading this open letter, I think it was in The Guardian or something, so I'm really posh reading The Guardian, but it came up on a Twitter feed or something. But
that's the only time I read The Guardian.
Yeah, exactly. but it was a really good article, and it was this open letter, anonymous, about this man, I think in his mid to late 30s, and it was to his wife, and he would never say this to her, but apparently they'd met at university, and she'd got the same law degree that he'd got, but they decided to get married. She decided then not to work, so she made that decision for him, and he was saying, look, I'm now about to have a nervous breakdown. I feel a lot of pressure to kind of bring the money into the house because we live a certain lifestyle and we've got kids, and you're not contributing to, I'm not saying you're not doing a lot being a mum, but the kids are grown up now or grown. Yeah. You could help with this. I think there'll be quite a few people in that position. At home, it's equal, right? So there's
it's a set culture, though, isn't it? It's a historic set culture.
You provide.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure. We've taken that out of the equation. We're 50-50 on everything, right? And I earn same.
But why wouldn't you want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to be 50, in terms of being able to support that fact? Because you then create a bigger support system, right? If you're
exactly.
If there is, and it obviously works for some people, it doesn't work for others, but money does make the world go round, and although that's not the be all and end all things, but at that time where money might be reduced is where you need to work together a lot more.
And that's the thing. And I don't think people should make... I find that unfair for men that some, I'm not saying all of them, some women make the assumption that, right, that's it, I'm having the kids and now I'm not going to work. I think you need to think very carefully about that and have that conversation, because that puts an awful amount of pressure, as you said, on the kind of breadwinner, right? But
also for the female, I think it takes you out of that social element. You've got definitely a body composition change. The interaction with people is not there. You're not going to have people around you all the time. There are, let's say, cons to and pros and cons, obviously, to both sides.
Yeah, definitely.
But as I said, for some people, it absolutely works.
Yeah.
And for some people,
no, absolutely, it does. But it was just, I'm still still think about that article, because I wonder how many other men are feeling like that. There's been this assumption made that the wife is going to stay at home by the wife quite often, and then they're
How many
dealing
men
with
do you think
pressure.
don't have children because in that type of relationship? Do you think there's a lot of men that do that?
I don't know, actually. I mean, I've heard people say that it's that level of commitment, the thought of that commitment, it's quite scary. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to say that I'm in the. I can get into the head of a man. How men think.
I like it because it gets me to think and open up different things that I've not really often spoken about or stuff. But it is very interesting. Will we ever get a racial-free equality world? Not in our lifetime.
I don't think so in our lifetime. I would love that, and I think what you said earlier is something. It must be something about the power somewhere. There's some. Because you only ever try and bring somebody down when you're almost frightened of them or scared of the power of it. So there must people who aren't white males must hold some kind of power somewhere that like the women about to give birth and stuff, and men
There's
can't.
a lot of conspiracy theories that I think link the top of my mind with regards to that, but a lot of powerful people are in a position or in power positions tend to be of white background, complete white.
Exactly. So I think that might be what it is.
And that's just generation and stemmed and then just kept going, which hasn't let an opportunity for someone of colour, of any colour, to improve the service or the offering, the whatever it might be.
I think people are petrified of change, right, and seeing things. But once you get them over that, I mean, that's true of anything, right? You know,
I think if people
change is
understand
hard.
Why if they understand why the benefits and everything else, it tends to. It's like fitness, right? If you understand the why of what you're doing, you're more likely to succeed at doing it. If you don't, you're more likely to start, stop, and never go back again.
Exactly.
I don't know. Maybe. What are your plans? What are the goals now for the next? Let's go with. Have you got any personal goals before fitness? Have you got any personal goals that now you're setting your eyes on over the next couple of months?
I don't think I do actually. I said I've survived this long without really having a focus. No. There's some CrossFit specific ones, so I will get a pull-up at some point. I will tackle box jumps, without having a nervous breakdown every time. I love those kind of challenges because they're things I can. And actually, one of the lovely things about here is I can really see the progress. So I got on the assault bike last night and did 10 calories in.
Nice.
way under a minute, right?
Nice.
So I
which is very hard for a lot of people.
I nearly puked afterwards, but and I did it 4 times in a row. So it's things like that where I'm seeing myself improve. I don't just do things to kind of coast along. I do like to see myself getting better at things. So I'm not. I mean, my husband, he's 51, so he's like, right, in his mind, he's going to retire when he's 60. So I've got 9 years to figure out if that's what I want to do as well. So no, we're drifting, but really happily drifting. Good. in a nice place.
Good. And one thing we haven't spoke about is you are 3 weeks in, 2 and a bit weeks, 3 weeks into our nutrition challenge. It's very easy for me to say, but talk about some of the things that you have found that really work for you for the nutrition. And what's involved. So
I was heavily skeptical because when you start that calculation and it says, right, depending on your weight, this is how much you can eat. Me and Lindsay, because we did it with Lindsay, I was like, there's no way we can eat 2,600 calories or whatever it was. And weirdly enough, you can. So that was a bit of a massive myth bust because it's totally anti all the advice you've ever had about counting calories and all that kind of stuff. It's not really like that. So we were a bit, but it busts those myths within the first few days. What it's taught me is just eating for what you're preparing your body to do. So it's almost treating your body like a bit of a cool machine, which is really nice, and you're treating it well. So you're putting the right fuel in or at the right time. The actual thought of starting it was way harder than the starting it.
Really?
Yeah. So the weekend before, I think we spoke to you quite a bit about what we're going to eat and what we're going to do, and then on the Monday you just get up and do it.
Is that because, do you think that's because of the misconceptions with regards to diet? Let's say, because I want to keep saying this, that our nutrition challenge that we offer is not a diet.
No, it's not.
But people look at nutrition all the time as diets.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it doesn't have to be.
No, I think it was more, you do have to use your brain a bit more to think
Yeah.
about what you're going to eat. And I mean, I did think to myself, it's harder to hit my protein with being a vegetarian.
Yeah.
However, I'm doing it, right? So in fact, I was chatting to one of the other CrossFit members the other day saying, I've managed to do it as a vegetarian, hitting the protein. And they're like, really? So protein shakes are my new best friend, or protein powder is my new best friend. I've got it in 4 different flavours, including a flavour-free one, because you can actually put it in soup. That worked. So it was the thought of starting and the thought of not being able to do it, but you kind of get, I've got 5 or 6 meals now, and I know which one I'm meant to eat here, and if I fancy corn sausages versus corn burgers, I'll do that. So it's actually, I'm in a routine. The not drinking's been, because we chose to do that, so I know you don't say you have to do that, but we chose to do it. Which
I think gives you the best chance of success for those 30 days, really, because you're allowing more chance of success for that.
Definitely, because you're right. I mean, as soon as it's weird, I'm much more self-aware about what I'm eating and why I'm eating. So I went to the cinema, I think, the first week in, and I did my meal as a box of nibbles, right? Because I recognise that emotionally, I go to the cinema and I want to nibble. So I had carrot and hummus, I had blocks of cheese, I had a little bit of popcorn that I'd measured out, and because I was nibbling like everyone else was,
it was normal.
It was cool.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do the same thing tonight. We're going to watch the James Bond movie.
Oh, wow.
But I don't need to eat. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to have it as my meal.
Yeah. We're I don't know where we're just trained to overindulge.
Yeah.
We're trained to chase something that isn't there. But actually, if you start to break things down of like what you need to do and how you need to get there, it becomes very, very easy. Yeah. But again, it's understanding the why, like through the process, especially in the information pack and stuff, we try to explain as much as we can why you're doing it. And that's probably why I think you've had so much success at it, because the understanding of why has been greater.
And I'm not stopping. So we will go out and have a drink next Wednesday.
And that you should, and as I said, you should absolutely do it, because although I didn't say from the beginning that you should completely remove it, but because you've taken it out, you're now wanting to implement things like that you would do not every day, but you would do on a social element too. Yeah. Because you don't want to, life's too short to be saying no. Absolutely.
But I feel much better. I mean, the getting on the scales and seeing it, it's a nice side effect, right?
Yeah.
6 pounds down after a couple of weeks, I was, amazed by that, and I feel better. I know, for example, and it's pretty flexible. So I know if I eat carbs at lunchtime, so I have to not do that because I'll fall asleep. But that's really cool. I know that I can adjust something, and I will feel the physical benefits.
Yeah,
it's just like you know your body.
It?
You just know. It's weird just how much I know my body.
And once
now.
you get it, it clicks and sticks.
Absolutely. So there's been a couple of. I mean, I'm going into London a bit more. Some days it's harder to prep, but by the time you've got home and got yourself sorted out. But I know I can grab on the move now as well. That will do it. So my breakfast is non-negotiable. That's a balanced smoothie and everything. It's got everything in it. And then lunch I can be a little bit creative, but and then I can always use a protein shake to kind of get the protein element up, which is. Yeah.
And a lot of it's just preparation. Like as you said, going into London now, you know exactly what you need for that meal that you're, in your head that you would, let's say for example, if you're at home, you have X, Y, and Z, but you know that if you're out, you're grabbing the equivalent too.
Yeah, exactly.
And just making it work for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Lynne, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And guys and girls, join us next week.